What's up, RotoViz?
Welcome into the RotoViz Fantasy Football Show. I'm Dave Caban alongside Curtis Patrick. This is fairly momentous as this is now the second episode in which there may be people out there watching this broadcast live. As a result, you did not get the little intro that I normally do where I say what we're going to be talking about on the episode. We'll have to think about if we want to bring that back, but we are going to be talking about some Dynasty trades and taking a look at some output from the Strength of Schedule app. We also have an FFPC stat attack. Geared up for this show. Curtis, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. I'm very geared up too. I think we had a great show yesterday. I think I'm just getting all this extra energy from not editing the rookie guide anymore. It's just, you know, I'm a doer, man. Like I'm a man of action, and to get into like an artistic creative space for me other than with music is kind of tough. Like Blair Andrews, you know, our managing editor for the site, he is much better served reading through the nitty gritty of all the data and all the research that's in that thing. But that is a natural segue to plug the guide, which we're going to be doing for the next couple of weeks. So just get used to it. The 2022 RotoViz Fantasy Football Rookie Draft Guide is available on the website. Just go to rotoviz.com. Click on 2022 Rookie Guide. You can buy all 3 volumes. The spring's just $20, and then you get a 15% off coupon code for 15% off of a rotoviz.com 12-month subscription. So it's like a half off. Basically an $11 rookie guide. You can't beat that. Let's get into the show, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. No brainer. Go get the rookie guide. All right. So the first place we're headed this evening is to review here a little trade that was sent. Actually, did you propose this, or was this sent to you, Curtis?
Oh boy, are we talking about the Jalen Hurts trade?
Yeah, we're talking about the Jalen Hurts trade.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, I'll get into this a little bit. So, this is not something I started with, but the situation is I joined this league. It's one that Scott Baird invited me to, I think 2 or 3 years ago. It's for a good cause. There's a charity element to it for like an animal shelter, I think. I can't remember. But it's the only Dynasty startup I've ever joined where I didn't have the bandwidth at the time to be active in the startup. And I've just regretted, not the people that are in the league are awesome, but I've just regretted joining that league because I wasn't engaged in the startup.
Yep.
Just so counter to the way of things. And so the team's not performing very well. It's just been stuck in the middle. I think I might have made the playoffs the first year, like, you know, as the 6th seed. And then this year I had some injuries and made some pivots during the season, trying to get younger, you know, trading Nick Chubb during the playoff run for DeAndre Swift, some moves like that to set me up for the future. Well, the team's a little thin. I didn't have draft picks. And this trade comes into my inbox. And it's just Herbert and A.J. Dillon for Jalen Hurts and Jalen Waddle and the 111. And I'm thinking, Dave and I have talked a lot about Jalen Waddle and how special his rookie season is. He's not one of the players that I was really on, but he's outperformed expectation. His value has risen precipitously. Jalen Hurts is a player that Dave and I have been on. I believe in him a lot, but this is a pretty big pivot, man. Like Herbert is kind of a consensus top 5 QB at this point. And the situation feels very, very safe there. You know, he's unlikely to lose more than a round of startup value, even if he finishes as like the QB 10 in 2022. Jalen Hurts, on the other hand, is going to probably get one more year. He's got the team's vote of confidence, right? And they've got all those first-round draft picks this year, right? But it feels a little bit shaky. So, kind of just unpacking this, what it came down to is just didn't feel like quite enough. And so I did the classic Curtis move that allows us to rebuild roster. I upgraded a rookie 3rd to a rookie 2nd as well in order to close the deal. So I feel good. I feel good about it. Like there's multiple ways that I can win here, you know, with the 1st, with Waddle. I think Dylan to Waddle is ultimately a good pivot to make on a starting lineup setting when you start 11 players. We'd rather have the wide receiver upside there than Dylan. But what do you think about this one, man? Because this honestly did not get great reviews on Twitter. Usually those ends up being my best trades. Honestly, the more that the community hates the trades that I make, I find those being the ones that like 90 days from now, 6 months from now, I just retweet and people are like, how did you do that? So what do you think, man?
I'm actually kind of surprised to hear that Twitter wasn't on this. I mean, I understand that it has one of those players that has been a guy that I really liked. Well, actually, two guys that I really liked. But overall, to me, I really like this trade. You were able to upgrade on the rookie picks, the 111 and a 207. That's pretty nice. Maybe in the context of this year, it's not as exciting as some people might like for it to be. But I think that I would much rather have Waddle than Dylan. We talked this week about how good Jalen Waddle was. I expect you to extract a lot more value from out of him long term, maybe even in the short term as well. Dylan's already been in the league a couple of years. There's signs that he could put together a couple of really good years, but with how good Jalen Waddle played, I'm not sure that you can really make an argument that you're going to be able to expect much more, if anything more, from Dylan. At the quarterback position, I think that might be where people see this large delta, but you still have so much upside in Hurts. I mean, Herbert's been awesome. We're going to talk a little bit about the schedule that the Chargers played later, but I don't think that the disparity between the two, even if you favor Herbert by a lot, has enough of a gap that what you gained with those other pieces in that trade outweighs it. So I really like this trade. I think for a team that's looking to rebuild, this is how you go about getting it done. So if people want to just focus on the players and not so much your situation, I don't think that's the way to look at this.
Man, I love the review. I'm asking like the other really biased Jalen Hurts fan here. So I'm kind of, I guess, pandering to my co-host with this trade.
Yes.
But that's the way I see it too, man, because I think Waddle can still accrue more value. We talked in yesterday's show about, the possibility of him being, a low end wide receiver one in year two. Just by taking a little bit of a step, either in yak or an average depth of target. But Jalen Hurts so Jalen Hurts was I'm looking at the NFL Stat Explorer right now. He was the QB7 in points per game in his first full season as a starter, fifth in expected points per game, led all quarterbacks in rushing yards. And, there is still upside. I think the only perceived downside with Hurts is that he's not the long-term guy. But if he goes out and has another year like this, and the Eagles get into the playoffs again, and they've fortified the rest of that offense. If the downside of not being the starter in 2023 was removed from the Jalen Hurts evaluation, I feel like he and Justin Herbert are equivalent assets. And so I do feel like this is the type of trade where, come October, if Hurts looks a little bit improved and it becomes very clear he's the long-term answer, this could end up looking like a smash trade for me. Whereas if I lose it, as long as I get good performance from Hurts this season, I think I can live with it. And it would just certainly, I guess, kick me into a full reboot mode. So I did want to also mention Billy. Billy wrote it into the show for tonight and just asked the question, hey, what's your outlook on Jalen Hurts? And so Billy, man, I just traded away a package of Justin Herbert and AJ Dillon in a third to acquire Jalen Hurts. So that should tell you all you need to know.
Yeah, it certainly should. Anybody that's been listening to this knows our outlook on Jalen Hurts is extremely favorable. Extremely favorable.
Yeah.
I just want to toss in one more comment here, which is that if you are somebody that thinks that Hurts has proven to be a competent NFL passer and continues to be, I don't think that there's any reason that you should be worried about the possibility of the Eagles not thinking that he's the long-term answer. I think at this point, it's fair to expect, even if he moves on from the Eagles, he's going to find playing time elsewhere, especially given that he has a skill set that other teams might be looking for, given the success that we've seen about quarterbacks and can also get things done with their legs and, have shown ability with their arms as well.
All right. Fair points, man. Fair points. I want to talk a little bit about another trade situation that I found myself in and just get your take on it. But I think to set the stage, let's make this our FFPC stat attack for this episode. And for frequent listeners, that the FFPC have been great partners to us for many years. And we will continue in that partnership. We help them develop what I think are the best dynasty leagues in the industry. Last year with our RotoViz Triflex dynasty leagues and dynasty best ball leagues. And this is an offer I got actually in an FFPC dynasty league. It's a new owner. So we adopted an orphan. Last week we talked about the importance of, going through the exercise of adopting an orphan to become kind of that next level dynasty player. This is one of those guys that took that advice. He immediately jumps in the league, does what you should do. You adopt a team, say, hey, I'm new to the league. I'm looking to make deals. And so that's good. Good on him. And so he immediately, just sends me, just kind of this boilerplate offer of, he inherited a team with 4 2022 firsts. And he's like, I'll trade one of my lower 2022 firsts for your 2023 first. I'm trying to diversify his assets. This is actually a smart move. This guy's doing some good stuff. So I'm looking at my team. I'm trying to make pivots. I want to get rid of Ezekiel Elliott. And there's not really a good match. He's got like the 106, the 109, the 111. I feel like I can't get the 106 from him, but the 109 doesn't feel good enough. But I see Rashad Penny on the squad. And I'm thinking, all right, what can I do here? Maybe to take a risk on Penny, divest from Zeke, because I also own Pollard on this squad. So just like we would do in redraft in a zero RB build, and one of the reasons that we don't necessarily handcuff the backs on our squads at RotoViz is because, we want to increase our potential to win in multiple backfields. So if I divest from Zeke, hold on to Pollard and grab Penny, regardless of where Penny lands, as long as he doesn't land in Dallas, I've got exposure to another, upside back in a different offense, get rid of the more aged player, declining asset, and get, Penny's a player kind of like Hurts, right? If everyone knew that he was going to start next year, his value would be sky high off of the strength of what he just did the last 8 weeks. So, I reply, and I think my first offer was, that 2023 third and Zeke for the 2022 102 plus Penny. And, the guy scoffs. I actually don't think it's that far off to the right Zeke owner or the right Zeke fan. But I thought maybe he would counter with the 106. And we're kind of just been going back and forth. I want to pause here for the stat attack. The reason I'm trying to offload Zeke, on the surface, he was RB7 again this year. And what's the big problem? What's the big problem with a running back that, is a mid RB1? He was drafted as a mid RB1, he returned value. And, the problem for me is the role is just never going to be, again, what it's been. I'm looking in the NFL Stat Explorer here, and I want to draw your attention to expected points per game here. Okay. He's RB14 this year. Actually, for the first time in a while, 2020 is extremely inefficient. But in 2020, let's look and see what happened. He was RB4 in expected points per game. He's protected by the volume and the value of the role. Oh, in 2019, RB3. 2018, RB3. Okay, sensing a theme here. 2017, RB4. Okay, so for the first time in the past 5 seasons, Zeke is an RB2 in terms of role. Now, I think it would be unwise to assume that trend would reverse with another year of wear on his legs and, Pollard entering the end of the contract and then want to get max value out of that player. So, having heard me talk through this, is it too risky in your mind to move Zeke for a package of Penny plus whatever picks? Like, let's say I go back to this guy, just say Penny plus the 111 for Zeke. That might be what we could land on. What do you think about that?
My thoughts here are that this is the type of trade that people will often view as a bad move for you, but really this is the perfect point for you to make a trade. You're able to actually get the trade conducted because of the name acumen that Zeke still has at this point. He's coming off of a solid season. But if you feel that a player's cliff is impending, this is how you go about unloading them. You do it. Sometimes you have to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable, but we know that getting the picks and taking these high upside guys is what pushes your team forward. So I can see why people would push back on this. Personally, I think we're at the point where I would want to divest of Zeke, and I think that this is a good way to do it. Maybe some people will argue that you should try to get more for him, but the other thing is we're not the only people that are anticipating Zeke falling off. We're not the only ones that see this value going down. Other managers know that, so you're not always going to get the price tag on a player that you might think that you would have at their peak, and you just need to get over that. So, I mean, I like the move. I don't think it's going to get good reviews from many other people, but I say go for it.
That's all right, man. I'm trying to win the trade in the middle of the season,
Exactly.
not in the off season. So the last question before we kind of pivot to some of the other stuff, because everyone knows I love talking dynasty trades, man. This is what gets me going. I love building these teams, taking care of these teams, winning dynasty titles, helping other people win dynasty titles. It's what gives me life, man. So, the other trade that the initial trade that he offered me, I already know my answer, but I don't hear your answer. He offered me the 2022 109 for my, at this point, seemingly random 2023 first. Would you just accept that deal? What are your thoughts on that deal?
All right.
After evaluating the 2022 class. Yeah. 109.
I don't think so. I don't think I'd take it.
I
think I
wouldn't
rather
either.
take my random shot next year.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. In a one QB dynasty league, we've kind of got our tier. When you look at that 1A tier, that 1B tier, we've got that line after player number 7 right now. Now that could change, but a couple spots below that. And, to get what is technically a tier 3 player, just because we're calling the first 2 tiers 1A and 1B, I don't think I can do it. Anything could go wrong, with my squad. The 2023 class has, all this kind of early appeal to it, the appeal of the class out in the future. It feels a lot like classes a couple years ago where, we'll just wait 2 more years. Well, there's a lot going on next year. There's a lot going on next year. We got some big time backs coming out. We got some big time receivers coming out. If you want to know who those are, check out our Devy rankings. Me, Travis, and Stefan rocking those. I just can't do it, man. It could all go wrong. So I think I would do it though if he offered me his 106. If he offered me his 106, I can get into that tier where I actually don't even think I would have to take the last player in the tier. I would still have a little bit of option and choice. Maybe I'll go back with that if I can't get him to take Zeke off my hands.
Well, let me ask you a question here, right?
Yeah.
As a dynasty manager, do you think that there's an element of strategy in having a first round pick that you can trade that doesn't have the particular pick assigned to it? Like, I mean, I think we could all agree that in this case, that's kind of more valuable to you than the 109, even though we are in the year in which the pick is actually going to be usable.
Yeah. The more information you have about a pick, unless it's like the 101, really, in any given year, the guaranteed 101, the more information you have about a pick, the less valuable it becomes until a certain point. So, if the reason that I say the 106, I think the 106 will gain quite a bit of value between now and the NFL draft. We're going to get through the combine. We're going to get, lots of mock drafts from the experts. We're going to, the combine's in person. Teams can interview players this year. They get their 30 interviews back. It's not going to be like last year where everything was virtual. This is going to be a traditional NFL draft cycle. So there's going to be tons of buzz, and you can start seeing players with, different uniforms on, different draft capital assigned. 106 is high enough where you can start to really envision who's going to be available. 109, it's still a crapshoot, man. I might get something great. I might run as pure as possible, or it could be a nightmare. And I'm reaching on one of my second round guys, basically. So, I agree. Kind of the nondescript 2023 pick, that can be whatever anyone I'm trading it to wants it to be. It's like a scratch off ticket. Well, this could be 10 grand. Yeah, it could also be going in the trash. I think that's a great element to mention there.
Yeah, one other note on that too. As you think about a 2023 pick versus a 2022 pick, the players in the majority of players in the 2023 class, we should have more information on, given the fact that they're not going to have that COVID season. Of course, it could make it harder to know what guys would have achieved when they were younger, but by and large, we should have more information on those players, which is another thing you need to consider here.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we've cut this one up enough.
Okay.
We're going to work in plenty of Dynasty trade talk. I mean, probably every episode, because I'm just going to be grinding so hard, the next month or so. But I know you wanted to talk about takeaways, right, from the strength of schedule app.
Yeah, so we haven't talked about the strength of schedule streaming app in a while, really. Quick overview of it is this is a tool
Hold on. No, hold on. We've got to hit the pause. We need a quick drop.
Right.
We're changing topics. What do you have?
Right, that's right. Let me give a different one here. What do I feel like?
Yeah.
Give
the people what they want.
All right. I'm glad that you intervened there.
All right. We go. All right.
There we go. So we have not talked in a little bit about the strength of schedule streaming app. So the way that I set this up is it's basically not just looking at the number of fantasy points that a team allows to a certain position. It's only looking at how fantasy relevant players do in comparison to their average when facing a particular defense. So the worse players do compared to their average, the harder the defense. So there's a couple of things that go into that calculation, but that's the good summary of it. So what I wanted to highlight tonight were just some of the teams that faced the hardest schedules. Now, the comment I'll make here is that you may have heard us sometimes talk about how it can be really hard to use strength of schedule when you're projecting out for a coming season, because it's very hard. You have to predict so many things to figure that out. But if we're looking backward, it's an easier thing to digest and make sense of. So in this case, we know what these schedules looked like. So what I wanted to highlight here are a couple of players or teams that had a very difficult schedule, and maybe why, if you wanted to make a case for those players or those teams having fantasy success in 2023, this is something that you could point to. So the first thing I looked at, quarterbacks, right? The 4 teams that faced the hardest strength of schedule for quarterbacks were the Jaguars, the Raiders, the Jets, and the Chargers. And the Chargers, we're going to see that at wide receiver, they faced a very tough schedule as well. So if perhaps you were somebody that was hoping to get just a little bit more from Justin Herbert this year, maybe next year is the year. But I think it's more interesting. He was the
QB2. He was the QB2 with the worst schedule. That's what I was pulling up. I saw you look puzzled when I was their tools. I mean, wow, he had the 30. He had the hardest or the 32nd easiest, however you want to say that, schedule.
Yep.
And he was the QB. He was the QB2. Wow.
Right. That's ridiculous. So I was kind of tongue in cheek saying you could expect more because, yeah. So anyway, but I think it's actually more interesting in the context of the rookies here, right? Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. For sure. I mean, these guys, they each only went above 20 points 4 times. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to pay attention to the fact that Lawrence only managed 3 QB1 performances and Wilson managed just 2. So if you keep in mind the fact that these were guys on teams that had struggles, teams that you would have expected to struggle, then you add in the fact and you layer on top of that how difficult of schedules they played for fantasy passers, I think that it should make you give a little bit more of a cushion to the leash that you give them, right? So like if I'm thinking about Lawrence in a dynasty perspective, I am going to recognize that, he was placed into a dumpster fire of a situation that on top of that, his schedule was not one that set him up well for fantasy success. So if you want to make a narrative for Lawrence and, his outlook moving into next season, this is one thing you could point to.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that would point to Lawrence rebounding. The regime change is probably going to be even more important than the strength of schedule. Just getting out from under Urban Meyer, probably getting a young quarterback-friendly coach. Byron Leftwich is the strong rumor there. They're also talking to Doug Peterson, I think. I think either one of those guys is a massive upgrade over what Lawrence had in year 1. it's very rare that I would just completely excuse an entire rookie season for a player. Like, parts of it are going to matter. I'm pretty willing to excuse most of 2021 for Trevor Lawrence. I mean, it's just you're just not going to see things hit that way very, very often for a player that was one of, thought pretty universally to be one of the better quarterback prospects in recent years. So yeah, I think this is also better used for the younger players, Dave. I think this is good analysis, and I think it's practically applied. The way you apply this is in the way too early best ball drafts. FFPC already has 2022 best ball drafts open. There's a $25,000 jackpot tournament, small kind of small pool tournament that's already opened. You can make some of these guys, your last round pick, and they get that year 2 leap. All of a sudden, it's just, it's money in the bank, man. Thanks for highlighting Wilson and Lawrence. I think that we can dive into that a little bit more. Also, a pair of teams that I think would certainly consider investing more in the offensive side of the ball in the upcoming NFL draft.
Yeah, for sure. So let's pop over just quickly here, Curtis, to running back. And I actually think we might save tight end and wide receiver for another show, as we're kind of coming up on the time limit here, trying to keep these, from being too long, especially this time of year. But the Giants faced, by and large, the most difficult schedule of all teams at the running back position. And I think this is important as it relates to Saquon Barkley. So if everybody recalls, he went out from week 6 on. He missed games, didn't return until week 11, and averaged just 10.8 points after he returned. And I think that it's important here to focus just on how grueling that schedule might have been. Now, there's a lot of bad factors for Saquon, and we haven't spoken nicely about him in a while. But I think that it's important to pay some attention to this, because if we see him drop so far in early ADP, like you said, this might be an opportunity to draft him in some of these early best ball leagues, get him while people have a negative opinion, because it is possible that some of what we saw down the stretch, it was multifactorial, but also this team was playing a really difficult schedule. And at running back, perhaps more than some of these other positions, that can really play a big role in what a player is able to achieve. Then, of course, on top of that, if you look through the other positions, you'll see that they played just a tough schedule from a couple of other standpoints, which, if the team is not performing well offensively, makes it hard for Saquon to be able to do a lot. Of course, you would like to see him be able to turn that into production as a receiver, but, just not a good situation overall in New York. I'm sure we're going to see some changes there in some of the makeup of the team as we progress into the draft in the offseason.
Yeah, the Giants are going to be fascinating to talk about. Brian Daboll is he's an interesting guy to land there. He's had control of offenses before, even before Buffalo. He had control of the Cleveland Browns offense for a while, a couple years ago. I think the case that could be made for Saquon with Daboll coming to town, if we're really just talking 2 years, right? I mean, Saquon's, I'm probably past the midpoint of his career, which is crazy. That's just why it's so demoralizing, and why we don't often invest heavily in Dynasty in these, kind of uber elite running back types, because just, the one injury just kills what they can do for your roster.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a year and a half, done anything for you, right? But Daboll turned Devin Singletary into a bona fide RB1 over the last quarter of the season. I mean, Singletary, his final 4 games, 16.6, 18.8, 23, 25.2, ends with 4 consecutive RB1 performances. In the context of the offense, people were, much more concerned with stopping, Josh Allen through the air primarily. And then, of course, he can ding you a little bit. But, I don't think it's fair to call Daniel Jones like a B rate Josh Allen. He's probably more like a D rate Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
But Daboll's probably going to get the best version out of Daniel Jones that's possible. Whatever that looks like, I think we're going to see it next season. And if the offense improves just a little bit, and the creativity and the play calling is just a little bit better. And the usage of personnel is just a little bit better. And Saquon Barkley's health is just a little bit better. There's room there. There's room there. So yeah, I appreciate you highlighting him as well. Not necessarily just even the talent of the player. The situation has to be unpacked as well and evaluated, because at the end of the day, what it all comes back to with running backs mostly is the opportunity. And we have every reason to believe that Saquon's still going to get that opportunity, but the situation around him should improve.
Now, the one final note that I do want to toss out here, though, and some of this is hard to bring up because I don't know if we can disentangle the injury from it. We have no way of knowing how it factors in. But his evasion percentage, Curtis, was 6%, which does make you a little bit worried. This is from week 11 on. Broken tackle percentage is 1.9. Missed tackle percentage is 5. Of course, though, I could point to the fact that
6.
Austin Eckler in that range had just 7. But I do feel compelled to put that out, like to throw out one negative, so that people don't take this as oh my God, look what could happen for Saquon. Always like to give multiple perspectives here.
6 evasion, 6%. That's like my son trying with me after he brushes his teeth and I'm trying to put him in bed. He's only 4. I'm probably going to catch him most of the time. Once in a while, he's going to get away. That's Saquon. That's Saquon with the defenses. Let's wrap it up. I forgot about this. We were kind of doing our little mailbag at the beginning of the episode. Calm Kelly, RotoViz radio producer, just absolute workhorse. He's Sean Siegel's podcast partner on RotoViz Overtime, involved in so much of the stuff that we do that's not, the writing on the site and the rankings. If it's media, Calm's got his fingers on it to some degree. So he wrote in and just asked, who's the favorite player you've ever owned or managed in Dynasty, Dave? It doesn't have to be your best player. Just like when you think about your Dynasty portfolio and the history of yourself as a Dynasty player, who's like a player's name that warms your heart?
Okay, so from a Dynasty perspective, it's definitely J.D. McKissic, because I was able to add him off of the waiver wire. I added him off of the waiver wire. I think it was 2 years ago in a league, and he was just that missing piece, and he exploded that year. I honestly forget which year it was, because there was a couple of iterations of different teams that I kind of tried the same trick with him on, and he really propelled these teams. But one of them, he was just that missing piece that brought me to the championship and allowed me to win.
Wow, J.D. McKissic, that's the stuff that you remember. It's clearly. I mean, he will definitely be lost in NFL history. 10 years from now, he's going to be the player that somebody mentions on Twitter in one of those name a random player threads if they're still going. But you'll be smiling because you're going to remember that Dynasty title that he brought to you. I've got a couple. My first candidate's a player that we've actually talked about multiple times this past week somehow, and it's Rashad Penny, because I've just been so damn stubborn to hold on to him that when he finally hits, how validating that is. He's been rotting on my roster for like 4 seasons, and then then he helps me cash in some ships. That feels really good. But what I would say probably is Tyreek Hill, because I've never. It's similar to McKissic, but it just is different because he wasn't someone that was largely drafted in rookie drafts, but he popped so much that first as a rookie, as a kick returner, as a punt returner, and he was just being used as a gadget guy. He was getting a couple carries even. It was very light version of what the Niners are now, full blown doing with Deebo Samuel, way before we saw Tyreek as a target hog. But he's just a player that. He was popping in the efficiency metrics. It was impossible not to be impressed when you saw, his explosion just watching a Chiefs game. And I added him in like all but one league. And then in my Dynasty League of Record, which is called Elite Lemonade, TJ Calkins, former RotoVizian and still a friend of the site here, I traded Brandon Marshall. It was New York Jets Brandon Marshall, who was a wide receiver 1 that year, by the way. But he was old. And I traded Brandon Marshall for Tyreek Hill and like a future first, because Tyreek was the throw-in. He was the throw. like I was like, you got to give me somebody off your. I knew what I was doing. You got to give me somebody. Like, just give me Tyreek.
Yep.
It's like, who? Okay. Oh man. And I've just always been able to hold that one over his head. So I added him for free in like every league. TJ's the one guy smart enough to roster him somewhere, and I was still able to prime away. So that's probably gonna be my favorite time Dynasty player for sure.
Yeah, actually, can I just share one more because that made me think of it? I was actually in a league where Diggs got dropped.
Oh boy.
And I was able to add him off of the waiver wire, which was such an incredible thing. Can you believe that? Like going back,
Stephon Diggs,
yeah, rookie year Diggs got dropped, and I was able to add him off of the waiver wire, and that actually is also one of my other favorite things that's ever happened.
Yeah, I could see why. I mean, you've been laughing for ages about that one, because that's just a misstep by somebody else. There's a spite drop. They started him, he didn't do it, or maybe he complained on Twitter. He's always been one of these enigmas wrapped in a riddle type guys. Wow, that's great. That's a legendary waiver wire pick.
All right, so I think we can get out of here on that. Good having everybody with us here via the podcast and everybody checking out the live stream or the replay. Curtis and I will be back with another show, recording Thursday night live.
That's right.
And then dropping on Friday. Already broke the rule of what I said earlier this week, where I said I was going to avoid that at all costs, but it just felt right this time. Curtis, though, I have to ask before we get off, you didn't tell us what type of bourbon you're drinking tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. This I'm gonna be sad pretty soon, man. This one's almost gone. This is Knob Creek 12. This is a limited run bad boy. They pulled it at the typical 8 years. 8 to 9 years is their typical pull for Knob Creek, and it just wasn't ready. So they left it in for 3 more years, and it's amazing. I think it's the best bourbon they've ever released, but kind of an accidental batch, and I'm not going to be able to get more of it probably. So that's going to be sad. And it was a really nice consolation prize. I went to the store thinking I was going to get Blanton's. I'm on all these bourbon distribution email lists, Dave. And so it was announced that there was going to be a case of Blanton's at the local liquor store, and there's going to be 6 bottles in this case. And so I show up like 3 hours before the distributor typically gets there. There's already like 20 people on, so whatever. So they start unpacking stuff. Everyone is like, jockeying for position, trying to get these 6 bottles of Blanton. And I see this stuff. I'm like, I'm getting out of line. I'm just going to get this. Knob Creek's good. Nice. I hadn't heard nothing about Knob Creek 12. It's a great consolation prize, man, because I wasn't going to get Blanton anyway. And this has been a really nice sipper over the last year and a half or so. So, Knob Creek 12. If you see a dusty bottle at your local liquor store that's there by accident, buy it and thank me.
Thank you for listening to the RotoViz Fantasy Football Show. Send us questions at rvffshow@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at DaveCabanFF and